Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our second week of live streaming here at Music Effect Design. I'm Jordan Pittner from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm going to be talking about the visual side of the design element tonight.
And my name is Mike Kruger. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'll be talking about the music design aspect tonight.
And my name is Holly Paxton from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm going to be talking the color guard aspect tonight.
All right, fantastic. So, first and foremost, thank all of you who have been watching over the last week. We've gotten some fantastic feedback, some really just positive reinforcement from a lot of you, and we really appreciate that. We've put a lot of work into this, and we're glad that you guys have gotten something out of it. I think it's fair to say for all of us that we've gotten a lot out of this too. We have had a few conversations with some of you on what you're looking for and a little bit more of what's going to be applicable for you and your group. And we've decided to change things up for the next few weeks in order to kind of help with that. So instead of looking at a specific drum corps like we did last week, we're going to actually walk through our design process, our version of what that looks like, and let you into just some new methods, some new strategies, and also give you a little bit of some homework that you can do that will hopefully help your process. Before we get started with all of that, I want to just kind of open up the floor to the two of you and ask you, when we're talking about putting a show together, what makes a good show? What are some of the big things in your minds that makes a show a good show?
Well, the first thing I always think about is kind of like what's the point of the show, and a lot of times that for me could be not even necessarily the content of the show. I'm not even like the show theme, but more like what does it do for my band? And so ultimately, it's always like, what does this offer the students, right? So maybe that year, the point of the show is something a little bit more artistic than I do in other years, depending on where the band's at. So it just varies, but I think what makes a good show, the sketches of where your mind could be at the beginning of it would be like, okay, how does this make my band better?
Yeah, I totally get that. For me, it's the entertainment side of things. Is it entertaining for a person seeing it for the first time? Now, does that mean that they're getting all the aspects of the show the first time? Probably not, but they should be able to have an entertaining read the first time. And then as they see it more and more, they're going to find little elements that are more intriguing than that first level of, viewing the show. But is it something that you want to watch? And if it's something you want to watch, it's probably something your students will want to perform as well.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that. Both of you, really. I think that when I think of a good show, it's something that the audience will appreciate on some level, and that can be a big spectrum, and also something the students will appreciate. I think when it's something the students enjoy, it's something that the audience is more likely to enjoy. I also think who you are as a team and as a group of people deciding the show plays a really big factor in that too.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking more about like almost like philosophical ideas. Like we're not even talking about really the content of the show. In some ways, we're talking about just like a non-tangible idea of we want our audience to be entertained and our students to gain something. And so that's like the dream, right? And that's what we're all really striving for. I mean, ultimately, that could be a deeper appreciation of our art is what they gain through what we do. And that could be for our students, and a deeper appreciation of performance. But I think the cool thing is that like we start the design process so early. A lot of students aren't aware of like the amount of time that goes into designing a show, and they would never guess that there's like it starts from nothing, right? But it has to. And so we're talking about like kind of philosophical ideas, but I think the next aspect to kind of look into would be, what is it actually within the design process now that we do that makes a good show? So, I mean, any ideas there visually or overall? Like, what are some of those ideas?
I think I'm going to add to your question, actually.
Cool.
Because I think basically what happens is that you're inspired by something, and then that explodes into an idea for a show. That's at least what it's been for me. has been like, hey, this is really cool. I wonder if, and then it kind of like leads into a thing. So like, what sort of things have inspired you guys in the past? I can start if we're not sure. I know that's kind of a curveball question.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I have some ideas, but most of what I do, especially early on, so my first couple years arranging, like 2010, 11, 12, a lot of what I was doing was kind of emotionally based or driven. And so, I mean, the first couple shows like that I wrote, which I worked with Dan Tucker on years ago, like we did a show called Rage Against a Dying Light back in 2010, and great, based on a great poem, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then in 2011, we did a show about pathways, and in 2012 we did a show, The Road Not Taken, and again based on poetry. Now we did a lot of combination of design aspects in those years, but the thing that led me and Dan there was underlying like real life things that were making us thinking about those show concepts, about finding your path in life and pathways. Many of the students at the time would joke that, oh, Pathways 1, Pathways 2. It was a 2-year show. And in many ways, we viewed it as being that way. So a lot of the early stuff for me was intuitive, like emotionally based ideas that I didn't quite have the skills to be able to execute fully yet, but I had enough passion or love for what I was trying to do that I was able to make it happen. So like, as I've gotten older, what I've been learning more is that you just learn a little bit more how to like craft it. So inspiration happens in many different ways now, and it could be in a sense of emotional, but for me, it's also kind of like I get inspired by just a cool artistic idea. Right. Like when we talked about last week when we broke down It Is, what gets me excited is like that's a very cool artistic idea of deconstruction, right? And so like that gets me inspired. So I think that the artist evolves some, and sorry, it's a little bit of a long answer, but I think it's important that we like, as we do this more little things can inspire you. And so it's fun to see that scope change. So sorry, I got a little bit lengthy there, but I think that perspective changes on inspiration. I don't get out of, a marching show doesn't like emotionally get me started. Like I don't get started by thinking of an emotion as much anymore as I think of more of like a technique or a design standpoint.
Sure.
So that's just where I'm at now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can really relate to the finding inspiration in things around you. And sometimes, especially for people that haven't had as many life experiences or big things happen to them, some of the best shows I've seen are not necessarily based in like something emotional to the director, because not every show can be that level of like depth and emotion, and those shows are amazing. But I think of shows that are based on artwork or like things people have seen. There was a Winter Guard show a couple years ago, I think it was UCF Pegasus, that did a show based on a piece of art, and the whole show was based on that one piece of artwork, and that stood as the inspiration. The most recent Winter Guard show that the school I work with has done was originally inspired by a painting, and from there it developed into a lot more.
I think that's fascinating you're talking about that. It makes me think of kind of like Impression Sunrise. Like we're going back about like 150 years here, but like when you think of like Monet and like Impression Sunrise and like the idea of like what that was kind of portraying, sometimes I feel like what Holly was just saying was like imagery or painting an image or an overall idea is sometimes the best theme. One of my favorite shows from like BOA ever was the mid 2000s Plymouth Canton, when they did like the Train Man show. And it's just so, I mean, how do you not have fun with it? How do you not get it?
Right.
And I think one of the cool things about that show is like, it's an open-ended concept in many ways, and it's hard to miss. So there's not really like necessarily a storyline or like an emotional connection to me that I have with that design, but it's super effective in the sense of it gets the message across.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a whole spectrum of things that inspire us, right? And so
Right.
if you haven't settled on a show yet, think about what inspires you, or as you're going into your next season, like what sorts of things inspire you and get you excited, because like the things that get you excited are going to help the identity of your program, no matter where you are in that spectrum, whether you're a staff member or, the director of a program or one of the, like a coordinator, designer. But I think, no matter what inspires you, I think there's a few elements that make a good show, right?
Mhm.
Number one, you've thought through all of the different options of your idea. So like maybe that starts with an art movement, right? Maybe that starts with like an art movement like we've been talking about, and you're thinking about, okay, well, what does that art movement look like? What was the period like? What kind of music maybe didn't come from that period, but what sort of music complements it? Or what sort of music is so different that it's interesting that you match those two together? So there's a lot of different ways you can go there. But basically the gist is you find a show concept that excites you, and then you expand on it. One more thing I want to talk to the two of you about is the value of variety or contrast in a show, and sort of what that looks like. So, like Holly, let's start with you. Like, what sorts of things should people be looking for in terms of guard contrast, and like what sort of value do you think it adds to the show?
Variety is like the color guard is one of the biggest roles responsible for bringing visual variety to the show. So this might mean, a variety in the textures being seen on the field. So changing equipment, changing flags, changing the texture of the flags. Is it a digitally printed silk? Is it a lame silk? How are you changing the visual landscape? Is a big piece of it. But I feel like the color guard can also be a big tool in changing in like helping express the variety of the theme. So if it's a theme, one of the things we're going to talk about is how many ways you can show the show concept in different ways. And I keep calling back to this, our most recent year's winter card show, because it's in my brain, but our theme had a lot to do with umbrellas. So we thought, how many ways can we show an umbrella? We showed umbrellas with our bodies. We had umbrella props. We had an umbrella inspired silk. We had lots of different things that help show the concept of umbrellas and body things of umbrellas. We were holding them, imaginary ones, and showing them with our bodies and being the umbrella. So that's one of those variety options that the color guard can really, really be the driving force behind.
Right. Yeah, and that's some great examples from the visual side. Mike, what about from the musical variety?
Well, I just want to, before I dive into that, I just want to say one thing. My mind doesn't always work visually. And so like one of the things that's so great about this is like you guys saying things like that impact me a lot, because a lot of what Holly just kind of said, and I think this is probably true for a lot of us, what Holly just said are things that affect our show without us having to do a lot of technique or changes yet, or like without us diving into like the aspect of performance. So she's talking about things that take logistical work and preparation and organization on the front end of things to make sure you're having like, a large variety of equipment that your guard's using. Right. Well, it's hard to plan that if you wait till the week before the contest. So,
we
you have
to
do
a lot of changes throughout as well, because we realized that after we had done our first draft, that there were a lot more ways we could show that variety after we sort of had a first round of getting as much variety as we thought we could. And then after we did that, we were able to find more mid-season.
And that's an interesting part that we could probably dive into a whole segment on, and probably should, on editing a show and what to do and what not to do. Right. And when to do it. And I think the before I dive into the music thing, is just it's the same approach here with what I'm about to say with music, is that these are things that you're doing that make general good design, right? And so tying that into music, there's a lot of aspects here. So the biggest thing to me to compare, like for music, would be pacing. And so that to me is contrast. And I think an aspect of this that we didn't mention yet are things that are similar, right? Or a reprise,
Right.
familiar music, right? So pacing is basically a conversation an arranger has. This show is going to be 7 minutes. So they should probably write about 8 to 8.5 minutes worth of music, because some of it's not going to be great and some of it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But like, to me, it's just a bunch of informed decisions of like, okay, what is the storyboard? What are we wanting to achieve here? What's the overall plan of the design? And what are the musical elements at play? So, for example, if we're doing a show that involves using things that create weird sounds, right? Just something out there. I might think of unconventional things like using mutes and the brass more, right?
Sure.
And that's an effect moment. I might be thinking about using having brass players blow air through the technique or through the instrument, right?
Right.
I might be thinking of other aspects there. And so I think that that part I noticed happen pretty well in the wind section a lot with what I see a lot. But what gets lost sometimes for me is the percussion book. And so what I mean by that is you want to offer variety in your percussion book too. And sometimes the dialogue between the wind and percussion book doesn't always happen. But it's a really important relationship they have. And so percussion writing, just like wind writing, to me is the same exact thing. It needs to be a large variety. And that means delicate writing, orchestral writing, and more involved writing. So everything we do is basically a contrast to each other, like section by section. But there are moments where we decide, okay, I like what's going on. Let's make sure the audience can sing this melody. Let's make sure we elongate this some. It's something that if you ever get into like a pop or a rock section of a show that's done really well, that's like crafted, people jam out and love it. There's a decision there that this should be a long enough musical selection that people remember this, right? So that is in contrast, right? And so there's a little bit of both.
And what about on the drill side?
Yeah.
So for a long time, the biggest contrasts were in the drill world had to do with density, how like close you are together versus how separated, and how that is related to like what's happening musically, or what's happening in like the show, like kind of structure, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But in the last 15 years, they've kind of blown it up, and it's turned into a million different things. It can be the velocity of how fast you're moving. That one's been pretty traditional, but also choreography plays a huge role now. So there's a lot more standing still, doing choreography movements. There's also texture, kneeling down, sitting down, lying down, or doing a combination of those where some are standing and some are down. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways to add variety, but I think one of the things all three of us soon, the two of you already have referenced, is the fact that there do need to be some consistency. So we've been talking about, hey, we need variety. Things need to be different, but there needs to be, like my mentor always said, always have a through line, something that people can connect through the show, no matter what. So when you have this idea of a show, think about, okay, how can I present this idea in new and different ways, but always keep within the realm of the idea of the show? That could be a story taking place over the emotional points of the show, or it could be like a theme, where if you have like, hey, we have this certain type of prop, then we can do it that way. So one of the ways that I want to show this today, I'm actually going to share my screen. I'm going to share my effect sheet. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is and how we're going to use it today. All right, can you guys see my Google Drive?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is a folder. It's pretty blank right now because most of my effect sheets are already starting to go to work. If I ever work with a group, especially for the first time, and they're like, hey, we want to do this, but we're kind of a new team. Can you help us out? This is where I like to start with an effect sheet. So this is what I call my master template. This is where I always start. So the first thing that I'm always going to do is make a copy of this so I don't ruin the original. So I've got my copy here, and let me open it up. This is really simple. Not a whole lot to it, but I'll kind of explain it. So an effect sheet is just a place where you can blast out all of your team's creative ideas. So for this journey that we're going to go on over the next few weeks, myself, Holly, and Mike are going to be a team that is putting together a show. So you're going to see the beginnings of the idea generation this week, and then we're going to kind of hone it a little bit more next week, and you're actually going to see that process in action on the screen. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is add these effects. We've got music selections. That's like, if there's a certain piece of music you want to play, if you've been inspired by a piece of music, that would definitely be one of the first things you add here. Effect ideas. What are some cool things we can do with our ideas? Stage ideas. That can be like if you actually have like some sort of prop that's going to act as a stage. It can also be like, hey, these are some visual motifs. We're always going to do triangles. We're going to do a lot of circles, something like that. Guard effects, winds effects, percussion effects. Can all be kind of their own thing. And then I've got some extra spaces here because who knows what else, every band is different. Who knows what else they're going to have you add. So I don't know. What's something else I can add? You guys help me out?
Props.
Sure. Props. Props. Okay, cool. Anything else? I think your
mic's off.
muted.
Mike.
Hey, there we are. You could break down the percussion so it's a little more specific. Front ensemble,
Sure.
Battery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So let's put front ensemble. So if there's any effects, or lately a lot of more people have had like their front ensembles on the field.
Right,
So maybe that's kind of its own thing. And then there are its own considerations. Okay, so what you're going to see tonight, let's just do like a really quick dummy round, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the important aspects of this. So, okay, the first show we're going to do, let's just say it's balloons. Okay, so balloons is the show that I want to do. Let's just go through a couple minutes here and talk about some of the ideas we might have, so people at home can kind of see it in action.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind on the music side, band piece, Portrait of a Clown.
Okay.
To Kelly, balloons, clowns, Portrait of a Clown.
Okay, yeah, I like it.
There could be dancing with balloons on strings, balloons on sticks,
Cool.
balloons by themselves.
2 O's, yes, okay. Balloons, dancing. Below that, I'm going to put on strings, not strings. On strings, inflated. So we have a couple different options there. What else?
I'm thinking there's a way to probably incorporate balloons or the sounds into a percussion feature.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, like popping. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, or the little, when you make the fart sound with the balloon.
Right. Yeah, right. You could have 100 people doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. Imagine rehearsing and tuning balloon
That'd be pretty hard.
That would be
awesome.
so funny.
Okay, cool. So we're starting to see an idea of how this works, okay? As a point of contrast, I'm thinking there could be like a slower movement, could be like a hot air balloon ride.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. And there could be hot air balloon silks, or I don't know, I don't want to call them silks, but 3D silks that can catch air and almost
right.
Does that make any sense? I hope so.
Fabric that catches air. Cool.
From a wind side, I'm thinking, what are goofy light sounds? So I'm thinking trills and grace notes in the upper voices, and I'm thinking mutes in the trumpet. I'm thinking of kind of comical, fun sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna put. I don't really know where to put this. Circus moment. like just something really funny, that kind of feel.
You could take it to the other side of the spectrum and start it off nice and light, and by the end it devolves into sort of a creepy, scary
plot twist.
Plot twist.
You know, the creation of it, the creepy clown. Like this could be, you know, the creation of that character, right?
The
so it could be a total plot twist.
Yeah,
the origin story of it.
Origin story.
I love it.
Right.
Can you imagine, like, you're going to have one judge that is absolutely terrified of clowns, and they are going to hate you.
Open the field judge.
Like, I am trying to be
Would that be effective? You know, that's the real, you know.
Maybe instill fear. Good. That was the goal. We tried. Always scare your judges.
So,
that's right.
So this is one example that we're going to do, and I just kind of wanted to walk us through that. Let's talk about a couple things that just happened. Okay, so we've been doing this for maybe 4 minutes total so far, and we've already got a few things in a lot of the categories, right? Some more than others. That's totally fine, right? You're going to have more expertise probably in some areas of your program than others. You're also going to have people that have just done the design process more. You know, I know some people that I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this show, and they just like spit it out. They just are like, oh yeah, you could do this and this and this and this and that and this, and they're like, there's 17 steps ahead of me because they've been doing this for 30 years, you know. We started kind of on this side, right? We started kind of over in this area over here, and I think the reason for that is just because this is where a lot of the stage gets set, right? You know what I mean when I say that? Like,
it's like a filter in many ways. Right.
Yeah. Like we don't necessarily need to be like, okay, we need props. What kind of props do we need? No, these things will probably determine what goes here. If there's anything that goes in the front ensemble, you know?
Right.
Wins.
Yeah. In many ways, I view the right side as being like the details. So you can't get to those things and make informed decisions there until you have big concepts.
So yeah, that's a good point. And as this side starts to become more clear, yeah, you're right. The details start to like add in. You say, okay, I know how to do these things now. This is technically our first meeting, right? This is our first time that we're sitting down and talking about a show. One thing that we did not do is say, no, that idea is not right. You know, and I think there's some value to saying that. Like, there's no wrong answers at this point, right? It's because right now we don't really know what this show is. We said it's balloons. Maybe we had a piece in mind, but we don't really know yet.
Well, I would argue that even if you say you're the director, set up a meeting like this and you're going through this, even if you fundamentally do think someone is wrong and you have the decision of saying, nope, we're not doing that, I think the thing that this process allows that's really cool, and I think that this is a really important part of having just a process, is that if you break it down by category, you have like staff members who are assigned to each one, right? So if you have your arranger involved in the process and your brass instructor, and you have your percussion instructors and your guard, you have everyone involved, the choreographers and all, then make it part of the job, make it part of like what you do, and make sure that everyone's required to put something in. So when you're working on this, is that if everyone's expected, we can't move on until everyone puts in just something, and that's okay, and that just gets people thinking. So you want to encourage people to you want to encourage people to put something down. It's better to be wrong, quote unquote, and put something down than it is not to think. It makes me think of what you said earlier, kind of with inspiration or motivation. I was told once, in grad school, I was asked in a seminar, I'll never forget, what inspires you guys? We all listened. He said, none of that's real. You just have to work hard. And I thought, okay, so like, yeah, right. It was like, okay, all right, thanks a lot. And so it's always fascinating to see like how there's a little truth to that. Okay. There's just a little truth of that. So anyways, I'll stop rambling.
Yeah. And part of what benefits your program from making this beginning process collaborative is that you get staff to buy into the show really, really early because they are part of the creation and the idea process. And
Right.
while they're your staff and they, work for you, work for the band, if you want the season to turn out well, the staff needs to be bought in. And the earlier that they're bought into whatever's going on, you're going to have a more fruitful season down the line because they're thinking about it when you start thinking about it, which means they're going to be coming up with ideas right alongside of you, which is going to put out a better product for the show itself and a better experience for the students learning.
So that's the big point number one of this thing is there are no wrong answers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Point number two, and this is important for you and your entire staff, no matter where you're at in that team, it's that don't have an ego with your ideas, because right now we're just pumping things out and we don't really know what's going to stick. My guess is that hot air balloon ride, which seems like a good idea, and plot twist, this is the origin story of Pennywise, probably aren't part of the same show, right? That's okay, right? You're like, hang on.
Well, you want to go down that? No,
it's probably not. No, it's probably not circus, hot air balloon ride, deadly clown in sewers. That's probably not your show. But right now, we don't have to have that figured out. If you look down here, you'll notice what I have here is the master effect sheet. So this is all we're going to operate in today. Is, hey, here's our master list of everything we've come up with. Next week, we're going to show you a little bit about what it looks like to start placing these ideas. So what we're going to do is take some of our best ideas, the ones that were like, this show needs this, and we're going to put them in over here into the other tabs. I've got, if there's a pre-show, I keep this section for like pre-show stuff. Part 1 transitions, I go all the way through part 4 and an outro. So like if a band doesn't have an outro, boom, I just delete this part, never need it again.
Cool.
And then I'll call this one MED design details. That way I know who I'm working with, right? So this group has 4 parts. They're really focused on their transitions. I don't always have these parts in, but I find them useful.
Speaking of that, seems like a very small detail, but that's what this is all about. Details. Name your files normal names. Yeah. I cannot tell you how many people who are like, I'm looking for this file, and it's 2020 version 2, episode 5, edit 4, and like, I don't know what this is, and they click it and they find out it's 4 days behind, 4 days, the edit from 4 days ago.
Right.
So just side note, keep organized on that end because it really does help you.
No kidding. A little bit of organization up front will save you a lifetime.
Yeah.
I think we've all had the nightmare of searching for a document from 5 years ago and just hating yourself so much for not labeling it more clearly. You're like, oh yeah, homework 5. That made sense. Not anymore.
Not so much. That's a good point. Okay, so what we're going to do with the rest of our time here is we're going to do a lightning round. All right. So Holly, myself, Mike have all come up with 5 shows and sent them over to Mike. He's written them down and put them into a hat. So we're going to play scenes from a hat, our favorite Whose Line Is It Anyway game. Mike's going to draw out one of the show concepts that we haven't heard before, and we're just going to, for 4 minutes, we're just going to barf out as much as we can.
So these are all the random ones you wrote. I have to give a shout out because I don't have a lot of hats. I don't look great in hats, guys. But shout out to my Euclid High School folks. I work with that program. I love those folks. They're awesome. That's the hat it's going in. Here is all the stuff. Close my eyes. All right.
I hope you are all ready.
The first one is Judges. A show about judges. We did.
Whose was that?
That was mine. All right, so I'm gonna.
All right,
here we go.
Up, everyone.
So obviously, the meta of judges is a pretty obvious one, like band judges. But the other thing I see is ridiculous, black robed, wigs.
Oh yeah.
Straight up judges.
I'm hearing one of those like like Law and Order, Judge Judy, like the slammer shuts. You're going to the like I'm picturing one of those like sound effects at the beginning.
I love it. Yeah.
Bad boys, some cops.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh
That's
yeah,
great.
you should put that in.
There we go.
Most like the most comedic things I have ever watched is field judges almost getting run over. So I think there could be a funny effect of a field judge.
Yeah. So you say that,
like getting trapped in the middle of the band.
You say that, and now you got my idea going. What if we, a musical segment of bad guy, and the judge is a bad guy, and the band's chasing around them around the field, right?
Yes.
I'm a fan. Cool.
We could do play on like Mean Girls, like judging other people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How can we show that visually? Because what's an idea there? Because
there could be a lot of opportunities for like sketch style acting and performance in the color guard. Like this show, like, does that make any sense? Like there's a character playing a role.
Right. So we could do like different, like judging others, Mean Girls. I think federal judges would just be a hysterical opening. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like court judges is really what I mean. I think that would be super funny. I have a gavel feature in the percussion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is like pop culture now, so could be a whole RBG, like notorious RBG and play on that.
You think you can get the rights to Biggie for band?
I don't know. Has anybody tried?
We'll be the first. Let's do it.
I'm all in. Let's go. Cool. Let's come up with a couple other ideas. So from like a prop or a like stage, something, what could we do?
You could have a courtroom. I mean, you could have like a judge's podium, a courtroom. I don't know what it's called.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Like a podium of some sort. I guess that would really go over in the other side.
You could have that.
So we'll put that over here.
I mean, if we're really playing on the meta, how can you make a mini football field on the football field?
You know what? I'm putting it. I like it. Okay. Oh my gosh. We ran away with that one.
It was so fun.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. I'm part of me is a little sad we started with that one because it's so good, but hopefully the others run. So again, if you're watching, like rewind or after the live stream's over, go back and look. And notice how we really started here, but we're starting to fill in little pieces of things here, right? And even compared to the balloon idea, like we have a little bit less in Guard World now. We have nothing in the woods. That's okay. This stuff is going to come. Let's just start throwing it out there and seeing what's there as we go.
And if you really think about it, that was a lot that came out of what was seemingly nothing.
Right.
Like most people's first judgment on a show about judges is like, what in the world could that be?
Right.
And it was the playing off of each other that made all of this happen.
If just hypothetically for a lightning round 30-second each here, taking what you see there, all the stuff we just said, create what's an 8-minute storyline. Go.
For real, I would say programmatically, it would be that each movement is separated. So we're not telling a story all the way through, but we're saying, hey, here's a version of a judge, here's a version of a judge, here's a version of a judge. So I would start out with something a little bit more like regal and like federal judges, very pompous and a little over the top, maybe some crime scene stuff. Mean Girls would be something like judgy. Maybe you could do like Radiohead's Creep. It's been done a lot, but like that's kind of a goofy way to think about it. And then you could do like bad guy for band judges and do something on the field. So there it is. Like court judges, Mean Girls judging you. Band
so
judges,
theme and variations and judging.
Right. Yeah. Theme and variations. Exactly.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Holly, what are you thinking?
A courtroom scene, and it's like a judge overseeing 3 trials, and it sort of goes in this like programmatic situation where it's like the judge is overseeing a trial on, I don't know, a bullying thing. So we get Mean Girls in there at some point. A trial about judges lowballing a score. Like,
so it's like an episode of Judge Judy.
Yeah, it's pretty much Judge Judy.
I was thinking the same thing, but it's band judges on trial. So
Oh,
there'd
yes.
be so the
play,
band
like,
judges are band judges
pretend
being on
takes.
trial for like the band director, like when you hear the thing, oh my god, that judge, they just didn't like us.
Mhm.
Is that true? And then we dive into it and we have to prove that. It's like a movement to prove like their innocence or not on that. And it shows like I just
You
think
could
so that's
do-
where my
yeah.
mind was going.
That's
you know?
so funny.
There could be
So,
like
like
a
a comedy.
flashback scene, like we played that run perfectly, and then the whole
Do
thing
like a
freezes, and then the flutes are like,
rewind.
doot, doot, doot,
So
like,
so what's important with this part is not only we're having fun because it is fun to be creative.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're taking concepts, design concepts that we're talking about, and we have enough experience doing this. Just like anyone, when you do this enough, if you have the craft and the foundation for ideas, and you can start piecing together shows and making magic happen quickly, right? So that we didn't plan any of that. We're just trying to test it out. So like we have 3 different ideas, but in the end, we're like, okay, we can see the merit in all of them. And what's cool is that like that's a design goal. Like you should aim to be able to try to take ideas and then start sketching out shows. So what we're doing right now is a trial run, like with 3-minute segments. You should definitely do this, like the 30-second ideas as well, and think, can I put something together? And even if it's just for laughs, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a great way, you know, I think as creatives, we all talk about like step away for a minute. It's a great exercise. Like you're talking about your show, you're like knee deep and you're thinking, oh my gosh, we've been going at this, trying to figure this out for like 4 hours. Just do this. Like try and figure out a show on, you know, something ridiculous. You know, what would a paper airplane show look like?
I think this is kind of what the guy I was mentioning earlier who said like just work. I think that's what kind of happens is like if you're just working and thinking of stuff, opposites do attract in many ways. So sometimes the extremes of laughing at something jolts another idea of like, okay, wow, what if this? So really there's no wrong way of doing it as long as you're doing it. You got to be doing something, right? So just be working on something. So I think it's time to move on to another one. You guys ready?
Yep.
You bet.
Not gonna lie. I'm gonna throw these down here because I think we've got a winning show.
I really do. If you do use our show, you better credit us because this is genius.
Is audience members. No, I'm just playing. It is nature.
Okay. A little bit more broad than our last one.
Super broad.
So for me, immediately I think of Vivaldi, Four Seasons.
Yeah, same.
I mean,
picking a single season, like to showcase, you know, fall or winter. Leaves, like specifying like a specific piece of nature. How can you personify leaves?
Okay.
Or trees or whatever.
Leaves, yeah. Could be like when I think nature, I really think of the forest. Nature is a very broad word, but I'm thinking like forest and what happens in a forest.
Like Smokey the Bear, like only you can prevent forest fire, like narrations and stuff.
That's my boy. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, when you're thinking of Earth, when you say like kind of think of like that, it makes me think more of Earth, like Mother Earth, which is Mother Earth is the name of a piece by Maslanka.
Right. Yep.
What about
just imagining a Maslanka on the field? Ooh.
Yeah,
that's happened now.
I know. It's so cool.
It has happened.
Seasons of Love.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I think the thing that I can't talk and type. That is not a skill that I have. I was about to just start typing when I was talking. I imagine for contrast, like rain is what I think, like gentle raindrops, and what the contrast of like peaceful nature could look like. Maybe like the storms and the high and low of storms could be its own.
I mean, from that aspect, almost so insane you could do with percussion sounds and sound effects.
Good
from bowing things and dipping cymbals in the water and trying out so many sound effects, putting a upside down suspended cymbal on a timpani. Like there's so many water effects you can do. So like rain sticks, so that can really set a mood, especially from a front ensemble. And that could be a staging thing. If you have people around the field doing effects with microphones.
Good point.
Like Thunder
That'd be
Sheets,
cool.
Cloudburst by Whitaker, right? Like.
Yep.
So not by just saying rain, you got me thinking like.
Right. Like
new musical
what else
selections.
could there be? Right.
Yeah, right.
Good point.
Right.
There could also be like a cycle of life sort of concept with it, either with, nature or with people. Like there could be a lot of depth in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we saw this past year, Lion King, right, was a hit show in BOA. So I mean, the circle of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Legally similar, but not binding to.
Sorry, Disney.
Circle of life. Yeah.
I mean, there's like a massive. I mean, there's.
It's like there's so many things, it's hard to pick one. But
I think that's one of the things that is important to think about is sometimes a topic like this, it's really easy to think nature is, that could be a cool show, but realizing the actual massive depth of what nature brings is like.
Yeah, I'm sure this has been done. I'm going to act like I'm a genius here, but I'm sure 50 other people have had this thought before. Like, what if the guard was Mother Nature and their actions on the field determined what actually happened?
That'd be cool.
So they have their own visual presentation when they're doing things on the field. Usually
there was that winter guard that was the frogs 2 years ago. I can never say the name of it.
Yeah, that was so cool.
I'm so sorry if you're listening and you know how to pronounce that.
You guys got me thinking.
I loved it.
When you say nature, natural, right? And it's like you make me think of like on the wind side, a natural trumpet or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like years ago, Lafayette High School, which just does great stuff. I don't remember much about the details, but I remember they opened up the huge trumpet fanfare. So like I'm thinking like if you have the numbers, it could be pretty effective. And I'm not saying you could even have natural trumpets, but the effect of what that would sound like, right?
That'd be so cool.
You think of a bugle straight. What do you think of? Do 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 do. I think I just sang the opening SpongeBob thing. Yeah, right.
So cool.
Do, 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 do. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Okay, cool. So that's another one. I mean, if you have never studied, well, not studied, but if you've ever looked into improv, you'll notice we're doing a lot of the same things. The yes and. We're never saying, no, that's not the right idea. This is the right idea. We're saying, when you say that, it makes me think of this. And that becomes something new and something different. Now, maybe we take a new path, but maybe we don't. Maybe that leads us to the show.
I always think of it as kind of being just that concept is what I call contagious. So that because that has two meanings. One, you're aware enough of what happened before that you think it's funny, and two, that you keep spreading it, right? And so you want it to be very contagious.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well done, everybody. Last one. Make it a good one.
All right. Christmas? No, I'm just playing. All right. Here's what we have. We have fruit salad.
Fruit salad.
Fruit salad.
Anybody want to claim ownership on that one?
Fruit salad. Good one,
Guys,
Holly.
I want you all to know when I was making my vibe that I was sitting like 5 feet away from a fresh pineapple, and it was the only thing I could think about.
Fruit salad.
Salad.
Okay.
What if we morph it into something else?
I think it's a great idea.
All right, let's go for it.
Let's do it. Yeah,
all right.
Let's see. Okay, so let me get this, since we're so eager to go, let me get this rolling. So when I think of fruit salad, I start thinking of like like mixing tequila. I started thinking of like fruits and mixing and stuff. So I think of like tequila, something fun.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, one of my favorite shows ever was Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
And one of the first episodes ever, they like all dressed up as fruits and did their own like little thing. You know, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like,
I just
danced
watched it like not long ago.
Listen, I sometimes I'm scared to like go back to my childhood and check those things out. Hey Arnold seriously holds up. Hey Arnold is fantastic. Okay, so we could go that way. It could be like each movement is its own
fruit
thing, and then the end is like Fruit Ninja, and we just put them all together and do like all sorts of like all sorts of things together.
I think there could be a lot of playing with colors in like the color guard side, like. I don't know, like I'm imagining the final movement having like all these different like reds and yellows and purples, just really bold fruit styled colors, or like and textures, like not just plain silks, but like textured flags with the digital printing is so cool that you could get a lot of cool stuff with that.
So flags with fruit. There we go.
I kind of think of like, what if you had the ability of like different colored shakos or uniform tops with like the band, like different sections of the band, like low brass are, like plums or something, and like and like something, they eat something like that, and we're I'm a low brass player.
I get it.
I don't know. Listen, I'm not saying anything. Low brass players, I love y'all. I'm one myself.
Me singing the song of my people.
I mean, what about like, I don't know, like using it as an introduction to color, but in fruit form? Because we've all seen that show of going from colorless to colorful, but like, incorporating it into like, a flavor focus, I guess. Like, I know they're not going to taste the fruit, but it's a new take on the black and white to color concept.
I like my only musical line here just says tequila.
I mean, other things that come to mind are like Fruit Loops and Fruit of the Loom and stuff. One of those doesn't work as well for a show.
We'll keep that one off the sheet.
Woo, going away.
Yeah, okay.
So I think also like options with like having actual physical fruit props. Like I'm imagining walking around with a giant blackberry.
Okay. You know what I'm imagining now is like a conga line with like the like fruit thing. You know what I'm talking about?
The fruit hat.
Yeah, like fruit hat.
There could be a lot of like music from around the world sort of involved with this as like part of an introduction. Like we're going from black and white to color, but also maybe a world with no variation and only Western music to
like more world music.
More world music.
Okay.
Whoa.
I think we've proven the point that you can take something and just run with it, right? It's a good mental exercise. I mean, really, I don't know that I'm ever going to do a fruit salad show, but just the ability to maneuver within kind of the confines that you give yourself is really good for your creativity as well.
Absolutely. If you take nothing away, which we all have a few things I think we want to make sure we kind of reiterate, but if you take nothing else away from this, the one thing I want you to take away, it's the same thing we said last week, and that is this is just a process. So process. It seems like it's a word you're going to hear us say a lot, but it's really important because we're not saying you have to do it a certain way, and we're not asking people to change the way we do ours. In fact, in many ways, we're being a little bit vulnerable by sharing what we do. But it's not because we think that what we're doing is the best thing for your program. We think that it's the environment we create that allows us to do these things. We think that's a good thing for your program.
Yeah.
And so like what we're really looking for is like, helping make sure that you all have a process in place to work with your staff. That being said, I think that there are quite a few things that like we want to like think about having you take away from tonight, right? And so Jordan, Holly, do you guys have a couple like main takeaways from this evening when it comes to like structuring beginning of design and like just any big points?
Yeah, I would think that it's just the idea that there's no wrong answers in this step. Like, we're not going to keep, I think we talked about it with the balloon one at the beginning. The ideas might not all fit together in the next step, but the fact that we are coming up with as many ideas as possible just gives us more source material to sift through for the next step. The more you have to begin with makes it a lot easier to place in the right spots in the show. And, you know, it's okay to say that an idea isn't going to work in this next step, right? We don't need to say it now. And we knew that hot air balloons and clowns were not going to work well together, but it's good to have them there to begin with. There's nothing wrong in this step.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were going to give some bullet points, getting a little bit of feedback from somewhere. Oh, it's gone. If I were to distill this down to a couple of bullet points, it would be good shows are thought out. You've thought of lots of different examples of how you can execute your theme. You've provided contrast, a lot of contrast, but there's still similarities all the way through. I think looking at that Judges show is a great example of hey, these are all very different, but they're still within the realm of the same thing. Like Holly said, don't exclude any ideas yet. Now is not the time for that. But also don't have an ego towards sharing your ideas. They may not be around. Lastly, I think we've hinted at this. I'm not sure that we've actually said it. Do this first part together. Don't do it alone. I know we're in a weird situation right now where we can't all be in the same room, but we're on a Zoom call. You know, Holly's in the other room, but Mike's thousands of miles away in Cleveland, and we're still able to do this process together. So do it together to start. Then kind of go your separate ways once you have your own ideas and start to formulate things on your own. That way, when you come back together, you have even more, and then you can kind of start that process over again. First and foremost, thank you all so much for, as we kind of wrap up here, thank you for being here tonight. I hope that you found a couple of things that you can take away. Just like Mike said, this is not the process. Mike kept saying a process, and I think that's what's important. This is a process. What we're hoping is that you take something away and that you can use it in your program. You have homework tonight. Mike, you got something to add before we talk about the assignment?
You know, I do. You could tell. I got to look at my eye. I think that maybe that might be the most important thing, is that is not doing it alone. And I just want to reiterate that one more time, because like intelligence, or like in the scientific community, right, when something becomes like a fact, right, people agree upon it. There's a universal agreement or understanding, like and so if you're putting a show out there that has a lot of decisions that affect a lot of people, your staff and your students, and you aren't working with those people to create that, there's not going to be a lot of intelligence behind what you're doing. And so, because you're missing a lot of aspects, and it's not because you're not intelligent or not really great, it's because that in order to have a great show, you have to have everyone invested, and they have to feel valued. And so, like, if you don't trust your staff enough to want to get their input, then you have other concerns going on in your program. And so I think that it's really important that you have a team that you trust. And so there are only a very few amount of people, probably 5, 6, that I could feel comfortable talking like this, who aren't my band staff. And I feel like many of us probably feel that way. So make sure the people you have on your staff are all on the same page, and vice versa. But just don't do it alone. Yeah, there's no point. There's no point. You're great. You know, you're not greater than a lot of minds working together, right? So Sorry. That's it. That's it for me.
It's great, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things I want you to think about, well, not think about, I hope you enjoyed what we've talked about. Please comment what your favorite of the 3 shows we came up with were: the Judge Show, the
Nature.
fruit salad show, and what's the other one?
The Nature Show.
The Nature Show. Out of those 3, which was the most interesting to you? Comment. We'll talk about it down below. Mike has a very fun thing to tell us about an event we are hosting next week. So listen up.
I do. So next Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, at 10 p.m. Eastern, we'll be having our first drum corps trivia. It's going to be lots of fun. It's going to be all the shenanigans you could think of. It's 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night, so we encourage adults to come out and just have an hour of fun with us and play some trivia. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to be asking you some trivia in a variety of formats and styles. Some are going to be a little deceptive. I can't wait. But we have a different way to doing it. The winner of the night is going to get $50 total to put towards drum corps. And that's going to so $25 for the person who wins for a swag item from a corps that they would like, and then $25 to a donation on their behalf to a drum corps or organization within the drum corps community. And so we're really looking forward to that. That's going to be on our Facebook page, on our Facebook Live event. So that's, again, next Wednesday at 10 p.m. And then after that, we're going to have more of what you kind of saw tonight. Jordan, you want to give us a little bit of an idea of what to expect there?
For sure. So between now and next Friday at the exact same time, the exact same place, we have something that we want you to do. Down in the links, you'll see a link to down in the comments, you'll see a link to my effect sheet. You're more than welcome to take it, use it for your own, use it for your staff. This week, either think of a random show, kind of like we did, that you just want to sort of explore. Or if you actually want to do it for your show that you're doing, if you're kind of in that part of the planning process, just go ahead and do it. If you would like, you can send that to us directly. We'll give you just a little bit of feedback and let you know kind of what we think and maybe some additions that we have. We're always happy to do that when we have a chance. And then next week, we are going to have our own effect sheet filled out for our own show that the 3 of us are working on. We'll talk a little bit about how we came to those conclusions, and we'll talk about what the next step is once you have that big effect sheet filled out with all of those different things.
Mm-hmm. And invite your staff to join us next week. If you're watching this by yourself, have them participate in the speed run through of the random show with the effect sheet or your show. You can email it to us if that's where you feel most comfortable sending it to us at musiceffectdesign@gmail.com, or comment it down below. Invite those people back next week because we're going to be going on to the next step, and we are so excited to move on with our show, as many shows as we can. So contact us. We have lots to share.
This is a collaborative effort, and we're happy to be part of that for you and your staff. Until next week, until Wednesday, 10 Eastern, thank you again for being with us, and we'll see you then.
Bye.